host, RenTen ASMR. If you didn't know, over this past weekend, we just concluded the first round of the NBA playoffs, the 2024 playoffs. So we had 8 wonderfully entertaining series all come to a conclusion, and now we can assess how these teams did battling against each other, and we can also assess how I did in my predictions, because before the playoffs began, I made a bracket of which teams I think are advancing in each round and who I have winning the entire championship this year. So first up, we will start with the first round series in the East between the number 1 seeded Boston Celtics and the number 8 seeded Miami Heat. So this series finished in 5 games. You have game 1, Boston winning the game by a whopping 20 points. 114 to 94. Wasn't a particularly close game, I wouldn't say. Going into the series, we did know that the Heat were short-handed because Jimmy Butler got hurt in that play-in tournament game against the 76ers, and it was announced that he would be out for the entire series. So, while it would have been very competitive and fun to watch if you were in it, I felt like everyone knew that the Celtics were going to win this. So, then in Game 2, you have a surprising tie from the Miami Heat. They rally their troops, play a very good game, and they actually end up winning 111 to 101. I remember looking at the box score for this game and seeing that Kristaps Porzingis had a horrible game. I want to say he put up like 6 points and was 1 of 9 shooting. Absolutely tremendous. No, that's not the word. Terrible. Yeah, I guess that's what I was trying to say. And so, a little bit scary if you're the Celtics, but they have the resilience, and I feel like it was just an off game from them. And they did prove my point by winning games 3, 4, and 5. Game 3 was decided by, yet again, a 20-point margin. The Celtics would defeat the Heat 104-84. And then you have a slightly closer game in Game 4 with the Celtics winning 102-88. And then finally, this last game was the biggest victory of them all. You have the Celtics scoring 118 points and the Heat only scoring 84. So, to finish out the series, the Celtics win by 34 points. Taking a look at these series averages, you will find that the Celtics were scoring 107.8 games on average in this series, whereas Miami was limited by the Celtics' great defense to well under 100 points a game. They finished at 92.2. In terms of rebounding, the Celtics also had the advantage, getting 45.6 boards a game, whereas the Heat could only manage 36.2. And finally, in the assist category, it was pretty well matched. The Celtics only had a slight edge, getting 22.8 passes a game. Assists, not passes. And then the Heat were able to counter with 21.2, so that was the closest category. And also, please excuse the background noise. I go to a college in California, and there have been kind of like tense protests going on all across these schools. So you might hear like faint chanting in the background. That's because there's a protest going on as we speak. But in terms of the series leaders from the Boston Celtics side, you have Jason Tatum leading the way with 21.8 points per game, 10.4 rebounds per game, and 5.4 assists per game. So a very solid series all around from Jason Tatum. And then on the Miami Heat side, you have Bam Adebayo leading the way. He scored 22.6 points per game, 9.4 rebounds per game. It's pretty impressive that Jason Tatum was able to out-rebound him. And crazy that the 7-footer Porzingis was not the one notching the rebound. And then Bam Adebayo also had 3.8 assists per game. So, the Heat made it entertaining when they won that Game 2 game. But I feel like we all had a feeling this series would be wrapped up very quickly. Props to them for winning a game. I had the Celtics sweeping, I believe, after the Jimmy Butler incident. Jimmy Butler, is a very funny guy. Afterwards, he was being filmed somewhere, and he told people, like, if I was in there, Celtics are in Cancun, and if I was playing, New York is gone. Obviously, it's just joking. believes that himself in part, but I know that he's also a very playful dude. It was just a fun comment from Jimmy Butler. So, yeah, nice to see that he's taking the loss not too personally. So, after that, we will move into the second series in the East. This was between the second-seeded New York Knicks and the seventh-seeded Philadelphia 76ers. This is a very entertaining series. You have Joel Embiid making it back for the 76ers just in time for their playoffs push and the playoffs. He looked a little worn and torn. There are a couple images of him, videos of him where he's like not really able to blink his eyes. Might have some nerve damage going on. It looks a bit funky. This was an extremely competitive series. When it's all said and done, yes, it did go on for 6 games, and New York won 4-2, but it was tied for the smallest margin of victory across a whole series. The point differential was 1 point after 6 games, which is as low as you can get. So very hard fought basketball played in this series. You got in game 1, New York winning a fun game, 111 to 104, a 7-point win. It was a close game, close and competitive. Nothing too crazy, I don't think. It was a game that New York won where Jalen Brunson didn't play particularly well, and they still managed to win. So, maybe a little troublesome for the Philadelphia 76ers. And then in game 2, you had a phenomenal ending. I think heading into the last minute of the game, the Knicks are down 5 points, maybe 6 points. Alright, we are back. Had to do a little location shift because the classroom I was using to record, a teacher walked into because their class was starting soon. So, nothing wrong with that. We pick up and move on. Basically, I was talking about game 2 of the New York Knicks Philadelphia 76ers series, I believe. So, this game incredibly close at the end. Knicks are down large with a minute to go, I believe down 5 or so. They hit a very big 3 to cut the lead down, and then there's an inbounds play to Tyrese Maxey. They throw the ball into him. He kind of has it, and they try and call timeout, but they're not granted the timeout. The ball gets knocked loose. It's up in the air. Lots of controversy regarding this play. A lot of people saying that Tyrese Maxey was fouled, but on the contrary, the Knicks fans are saying, well, he already pushed off to get the ball, so a lot of back and forth, but the refs really allow the physicality in this one. Ball is knocked loose in the air, it goes all around. I believe there's a shot taken, and it's missed, but then there's another rebound, kicked out to Dante DiVincenzo, and he hits the clutch 3 to give the Knicks a lead with very little time left. Then the 76ers, they have a chance to respond, but they're unable to do so, unfortunately. And so the Knicks narrowly escape with a victory in a very close-fought battle. One of the best games in this first round, easily. Tensions are definitely high in the 76er locker room after the game. You've got Embiid saying that was horrible. That game felt worse than the Game 7 loss to Toronto with the Kawhi shot. So a bit of demoralization, but also you can tell that the 76ers are not defeated. I think Embiid says we should be up 2-0 right now. It's still anybody's series. And yeah, that sentiment, it's good to have the fact that no, we're not losing and about to be out, but we're very close in these 2 games. There was a combined margin of victory of 10 points across 2. That's close. That's very close. So we move into game 3, and monster game from Embiid. I believe this is the one where he dropped 50 to give the 76ers a well-needed victory if they wanted to have any hope of competing. So the 76ers win that one 125 to 114. And then we head into game 4, a very competitive defensive battle, both teams scoring under 100 points. At the end, New York is able to come out on top just by a slim margin, winning 97 to 92. So yet another 5-point game. Sixers, like, they're barely holding on. They're about to outlast them, eliminate them from the playoffs. And then Tyrese Maxey happens. He wheels the 76ers back into this game. It's I think, two very clutch three-pointers to send it into overtime, and the 76ers are able to save their season, live to see another day. They win it in overtime, scoring 112 points to New York's 106, and we get to have a Game 6. And this one, it is played in Philadelphia. There's a lot of talk of how many New York fans are in Philly. I believe it was after Game 4, New York totally took over the Philadelphia home field. They were yelling out chants like "frick Embiid" and all stuff like that. So, the New York fan base is strong, and their fans are crazy. So, crazy in a good way, And yeah, he was talking up a storm about like how he wants a good home field presence, how they don't want that to happen again. I believe Michael Rubin bought out a bunch of tickets from their home stadium to make sure that there were going to be less Knicks attendees, and it didn't really work because the Knicks showed out and they won that game. So the series can be summarized now. You've got New York scoring 108.3 points a game, and you've got Philadelphia scoring 108.2 points a game, as close as you can really ever get. In terms of rebounding, New York had a slight edge. They had 45.5 a game to 41.2 of the 76ers, and in assists, it was very close. New York having 22.5 assists a game, and Philadelphia having 23. And then for the series leaders, you have New York being led by Jalen Brunson. He had a very, I want to say, okay, I'll put it this way. In games 1 and 2, he was not shooting well. He was still impacting the game very strongly, but the shooting was abysmal, and they still managed to win both of those games with him doing so poorly. Then he turned it up. He started cooking. Had some 40-point games in there, close to a 50-point game, I believe, at some point. He finished the series averaging 35.5 points per game, so put the team kind of on his back, especially in those last 4. And then rebounds per game, he had 4.5, and assists per game, he had 9. So not only was he scoring, he was passing amazingly. Very good series from Jalen Brunson. And then on the opposite side, you have Joel Embiid leading the way for the 76ers. He averaged 33 points per game himself, having a 50 bomb in one of those games. He did have a very hefty whistle, though. I want to say there was one game. I mean, Brunson also got his fair share of free throws in some of these games, but Joel Embiid in that 50-point game, I think he shot like 21 free throws. It's kind of insane. His game is, I want to say, less respectable. The way that he flops, it's really an exaggerated motion. You can tell he's flopping. He's like, I'm not a huge fan. I really did want Embiid to win the MVP last year, just because I wanted to see someone newer. I had more respect for Embiid before, but the more and more I see him play, he does pull a lot of dirty tactics. Like, there's a reason why he has the most flagrants in the league. He's got a lot of technicals. And yeah, it was kind of nasty. Game 3 onwards, pulling on people's legs. He pulled on Mitchell Robinson's leg in one game. He also kind of, I think it was kicked or kneed Isaiah Hartenstein. He elbowed Brunson in the face. So he was getting frustrated and resorting to these dirtier tactics. And I would know all about that, Golden State fan. I've seen it all with Draymond Green, but this is, not good. And then he also had 5.7 assists per game and 10.8 rebounds per game. So, coming back from an injury, now being able to close his eyes, he did pretty well, but wasn't enough. 76ers get bounced in the first round, and New York advances in 6 games. I actually don't remember what I said for this series. I said New York in 6. Wow, I guess I'm really like that. Giannis, it would have been very close. Obviously, the Bucks have the clear playoff advantage with Damian Lillard and Chris Middleton and all these vets, and Giannis, who has won a chip, being that main guy. But with him going down and them not having as much depth, then I felt like the Pacers did have a big edge, especially being a younger team, and you're missing one of your big rim protectors now and just a big body to clog up the paint. So we start the series off with a Milwaukee victory, funnily enough. Dame went absolutely crazy in that first game. He scored 35 points in the first half, and then he went silent in the second half, 0 points. But it was enough to outlast the Pacers. The Bucks won 109-94. Then heading into game 2, the Pacers flipped the script. They were able to win quite convincingly at 125-108. That was more of a score we were used to seeing from the Pacers this year. And then going into game 3, it was a battle, an absolute battle, very close game. Ended up going into overtime on a Tyrese Halliburton game-tying shot. And then they went ahead. I'm trying to remember. I don't know if it was to win the game or if it was to send it to overtime, but Tyrese Halliburton had a very clutch shot that showed how good he was. And it must have been at the end of the game. I think the clutch shot beforehand was Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton was playing lights out for a bit there in the fourth quarter. He went off, made a ridiculous shot. I want to say in the first round against the Celtics many, many years ago. He made like almost the exact same shot. I remember watching that one live at my friend's place. This dude just like randomly in the first round will give you a highlight for a lifetime. And so Chris Middleton battles very hard. I think they ran a play for him at the end to try and get another 3 off. He got it off, and I think he hit rim, but it wasn't good enough. So the Bucks dropped another game. The Pacers are up 2-1. Then here's where things kind of fall apart. There was no Dame. Dame goes down with an injury. You lose Chris Middleton in part of the game. I think he also was dealing with an injury. You obviously haven't had Giannis all season, or not all series. And maybe this is the one where Bobby Portis got ejected as well. So nothing's going right for the Bucks. They fall into a deep hole, a 3-1 deficit, with Indiana winning that game 126-113. And then it's looking kind of grim. But the Bucks do not give up. They come back the next game. I think Patrick Beverley plays pretty well. The role players, they all just step up. It's the first time that a team has ever beat an opponent in the playoffs without their top 2 leading scorers on that season. I believe I read that stat. So very impressive by the Bucks bench and those who showed up for that game. And then the Bucks got Dame back, so people were thinking it was going to be game over. But Dame did not play very well in the elimination game. He was not shooting quite efficiently, and so the Bucks were not able to do much, and Indiana eventually won that game 120-98. So recapping the series, Indiana wins in 6. Let's just take a quick look at what I had. I actually know it for this one. I just am boasting. I had the Pacers in 6. So, not too bad so far. Off to a strong start. In this series, the Bucks were averaging 110.2 points per game, whereas the Pacers were averaging 113. In terms of rebounding, very close. 42.7 rebounds a game to the Bucks and 43.8 rebounds a game to the Pacers. And in the assist department, the Pacers were well ahead. They had 30.2 assists a game, whereas the Bucks only had 22.2. There was a very funny quote by Patrick Beverley regarding assists. He was, I think, asked about Tyrese Halliburton's passing, and he was like, well, if I gave assists. So it's kind of funny. But series leaders for this matchup, you have Chris Middleton leading the way for the Milwaukee Bucks. He had 24.7 points per game, 9.2 rebounds per game, and 4.7 assists per game. A valiant effort from Chris Middleton, who really is the bona fide number 3 option in this. But Dame going down and Giannis going down, he had to do his best to step up, and he did pretty well. And then you have Pascal Siakam leading the Indiana Pacers, the newest addition to this team during the trade deadline. He had 22.3 points per game, 8.8 rebounds per game, and 4.2 assists per game. So with that, we will move into the fourth and final matchup in the East for these playoffs. You had the 4th-seeded Cleveland Cavaliers taking on the 5th-seeded Orlando Magic. This series, it was our first in the East to go to 7 games. A very, entertaining series, I will have to admit. The funny thing is this true? Goodness gracious. Sorry, I'm being distracted by the fact that it looks like the Cavaliers finished this with a negative point differential. So I'll get into that. This series starts off with Cleveland playing at home. They take the first 2 games at home, not scoring a very high amount. These were well-defended games. Cleveland wins game 1 at 97-83, and then they win game 2 96-86. So Orlando just cannot get their offense going in these first 2 matchups. Then the series moves into Orlando, and they come right back. They amp up their defense and hold Cleveland to just 83 points in game 1 while scoring 121 points of their own. So after losing the first 2 games, they win by nearly 40 points. And then heading into game 4, they do a good job of repeating their consistency, and they limit the Cavs to 89 points and score 112 of their own. So winning by over 20 points in game 4. So the series is tied up. We head back into Cleveland, where it's a very, very, very close game. This game is ultimately decided by 1 point. It is 104-103. Cleveland wins it. I believe the Magic had an attempt to win it, and they just couldn't get it done. But Cleveland just barely outlasts Orlando, and really this was the most important one. With the series being tied, this kind of controlled the momentum heading into the last couple games. Obviously, Orlando did not lay flat. They were not going down with a fight game. The series goes back into Orlando, and Orlando manages to protect home court. They win 103-96 and manage to force a game 7. Despite Donovan Mitchell's 50-point game, he put it all out on the line. He was kind of playing through injury, it seemed like. But Paolo also had a great game, and the Magic were able to, get to a final game where it's winner take all. And in game 7, the Magic are up early. I want to say in the second quarter, they take either a 15-point or a 19-point lead on the Cavaliers. Nothing's really looking great in Cleveland, and there was like an 80% chance, likelihood given to Orlando to win this game. But Donovan Mitchell turns it on. He gets things going. It was very clutch for the Cavs in game 6. I think he scored all 18 of their points in the fourth quarter. So he was willing this team into the next round, and he couldn't do it, but he was able to manage in game 7, dropping 39 points. So he came up huge in these last 2 games. I believe it was the second most number of points scored in the final 2 games of a 7-game series. The most being 90 points from Allen Iverson, and so he finished with 89 points. Just this shy of that record. So congrats to Donovan Mitchell and these Cavaliers for making it to the next round. recap this series. Oh, okay, let's admit my first defeat. This was one where I was wrong. I wasn't wrong by that much. I did think it was going to be a 7-game series, so all was looking good until the last game. All was looking good until the last 2 quarters, really. But yeah, I had Orlando taking it in 7, and in reality, Cleveland took it in 7. So I'm not too unhappy with my pick. I feel like it was still good thinking, but I just missed the mark. Donovan Mitchell was too good. But yeah, these series averages are very interesting because in terms of points, the Cavaliers were averaging 95.9 points in this series, whereas the Magic were averaging 100.3. So when it's all said and done, the Magic scored more points than the Cavaliers. But just the days that they scored them, it was not good enough. So yeah, the Cavaliers win with a negative point differential. In terms of rebounding, the Magic also had an advantage, 45 to 41.1, and in assists, it was very close. The Cavs had 20.6 to the 19.3 of the Magic. And I've talked up a lot on Donovan Mitchell, but he really was integral to the Cavs moving on to the next round. He scored 28.7 points per game for the Cavs, with 5 rebounds per game and 4.4 assists per game. And then second year, Paolo Banchero, great player. Very promising first series. Obviously, I didn't have Orlando going to the playoffs this year, and he is really molding this team into something much better than I thought that they would be in this upcoming few years. I still thought they had a lot of time left, but to finish as the 5 seed and then take a Cavs team all the way to 7, very valiant first effort. And I think there are good things to come in his future. He played very well. He's obviously the leader and face of this team. So, excited to see what he can do in the coming years. But yeah, he gets 27 points per game, 8.6 rebounds per game, and 4 assists per game. Then we have our Western Conference, 4 individual series on this side of the bracket. Let's jump right into the first one. This is a matchup between the first-seeded Oklahoma City Thunder and the 8th-seeded New Orleans Pelicans. This matchup, I don't think a lot of people had the Pelicans winning because they're missing their main guy, Zion Williamson, number 1 overall draft pick from a couple years out. Zion's one of those dudes where when he's on the court, he's looking pretty great, pretty dominant, puts up good stats all around, and the Pelicans look like a winning team. And when he's not playing, they're just mediocre. And unfortunately, he's playing and not playing at almost equal rates. He doesn't play a lot of games. So yeah, he is injured with some sort of leg injury, unfortunately. And it wasn't very close. OKC wins this matchup in just 4 games. They complete the sweep. OKC in game 1, this was the closest game by far. They just won it at the end. Both teams were almost trying to lose this game, missing free throws, just loose with the ball, not protecting it. CJ McCollum had a shot at the end of the game to win it, and the ball got poked loose. He got not a great shot, and they couldn't do it. So Pelicans lose game 1, and after that it just gets worse and worse. Game 2, the Thunder win 124 to 92, so a 32-point defeat for the Pels. And then in game 3, you've got the Thunder winning 106 to 85, so 21-point loss. And then in game 4, it was okay at one point, but Oklahoma City went on a 18-2 run in the 4th quarter to blow up in a tight game 4 and then complete the sweep. So they finished that game 97 to 89. Taking a look at the series average, you'll find that the Oklahoma City Thunder won 105.3. They scored an average of 105.3 points per game, whereas the Pelicans were just below 90 at 89.5 points per game. In terms of rebounding, the Pelicans did have a slight advantage at 45.5 per game, whereas the Thunder had 43. And then in the assist category, the Thunder were ahead with 22.8 assists a game, whereas the Pelicans averaged 19.5. For the Thunder, you have Mr. MVP candidate himself, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Lots of fun post-game interviews for him in this young Thunder roster. He scored 27.3 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, and 5 assists per game in the sweep. And for the Pelicans, who, they kind of struggled mightily on the offensive side of the ball, not scoring 100 points in any of these games because they're missing Zion. These guys end up being led by CJ McCollum, who had 17.8 points per game, 4.8 rebounds per game, and 4.8 assists per game. Not your ideal numbers for the best scorer on your team at the end of the series. So, yeah, not very close at all. I thought that Zion would maybe come back during the series, later in the series, and help the Pelicans get to 1 win. So I had Thunder in 5, but I'm okay with being wrong about that. Zion did not, in fact, come back. So the Thunder, they were just too dominant for this Pelicans team, and they won in 4. So I'll take it. I was close enough. And then after that, we had a very fun matchup between the 2nd-seeded Denver Nuggets and the 7th-seeded LA Lakers. Now, this was a rematch of last year's Western Conference Finals. You've got Darvin Ham saying that, it's a new day. The series is 0-0. Nothing from the past matters. They have the ability to prove themselves now. The Lakers do. So, we start this series off with Game 1. I feel like almost all these games had a similar flow to them. First half, Lakers play pretty well. And then in the 3rd quarter or 4th quarter, Denver responds. They go on a run. They limit the Lakers. The Lakers could be playing a perfect first half. And then in the 2nd half, the Nuggets just somehow come back. I think that's kind of what happened in Game 1. The Nuggets were down, but they rallied. They end up winning by 11. So not particularly close at the end. Game 2 was really the kicker. I think in the 3rd quarter, the Lakers take a 20-point lead. They're significantly ahead, and the Nuggets slowly piece away at it. With the final minute, the Nuggets tie up the game. The Lakers have a shot to win it. LeBron, he puts on his moves, he shows off his handle, drops his defender, and takes the wide open 3 to take the lead. And he breaks. He does not make it. So, Nuggets rebound. They elect not to take a timeout. Jamal Murray is kind of just taking his time, dribbling wherever, and it's wow, there's no sense of urgency. Very interesting way to end the game. So, he takes it to his right, goes for a crazy fadeaway shot on Anthony Davis, one of the best defenders in the league. As much as I don't really like to say, I'm not a Lakers supporter. Very annoying roommate who likes the Lakers a lot. But, yeah, AD, he's a pretty good defensive player, the best on the Lakers. Jamal Murray hits that shot on his face, splash. It is one of the coolest game winners I have ever witnessed. To do that in Game 2 and win a comeback victory like that, from this point onwards, I knew, okay, I already thought that the Nuggets were going to win, but I believe that they were going to sweep after that. That is a crushing way to lose. There's a lot of dysfunction in the team locker room after this one. Darvin Ham is saying one thing, Anthony Davis is saying another thing. Doesn't look good in LA. Then you go into Game 3, same story. Lakers get a lead. lost like 13 straight times to the Nuggets in a row, and they ended that streak finally picking up one game, and they played decently well. So they live to see another day, and then we go into Game 5. The Lakers battle very hard. Identical situation, They have a chance to take the lead. They aren't able to do so. Denver gets the ball. They give it to Jamal Murray. Clock's winding down. He's just going to do the same thing again. So instead of letting him go right, they force him left. He pulls up. Splash. This guy is too good. He's just too clutch. I don't know. I saw both shots and it's wow. I haven't seen something like this since Kyrie. Kyrie could really just, in that last minute, he was making that shot. And Jamal Murray, he has that with the Lakers. He just has their number. And so he makes it. Lakers inbound the ball. They try and get something going, but LeBron barely gets the pass to Dorian Prince. Dorian Prince takes a 40-footer, misses it. It's over. Denver wins it in 5. I have to say, it was an entertaining series, though. 2 very close games. And Jamal Murray to win the series like that on another game-winning shot. Absolutely brutal. The Laker... What are they calling him? The Laker killer. Yeah. And so in this series, you have the Nuggets averaging 108.6 points per game to the Lakers 106.4. The Nuggets averaging 46 rebounds a game to the Lakers 40.6. And the Nuggets 27.6 assists being met with the Lakers 24.4. Leading the way for the Nuggets, you have Nikola Jokic with 28.2 points per game, 16.2 rebounds per game, and 9.8 assists per game, nearly averaging a triple-double. He was great in every game. Jamal Murray, sometimes shooting not that well, but when it mattered, he hit the clutch shots, so he was huge. And Michael Porter Jr. played amazingly for the Nuggets. And then after that, you have the third matchup in the West. This was between the 3-seeded Minnesota Timberwolves and the 6-seeded Phoenix Suns. Heading into this matchup, this was one of the upset favorites. I believe the Suns started off this series being favored over the Timberwolves despite being the lower-seeded team. And so, that I don't think aged very well. I thought that this would be a more competitive series than it was, but it really was not a competition. The Minnesota Timberwolves completed the sweep, eliminating the Suns in just 4 games. And there were no games that were all that close, except for the last one, you could say. Game 1, Minnesota wins by 25 points. Game 2, Minnesota wins by 12 points. I guess a bit closer, but not huge. Yeah, not hugely close. Then Game 3, Minnesota dominates. They win by 17. And Game 4, Minnesota wins by 6 points, the closest of them all. But yeah, I watched the last couple minutes. The Suns were not really in a position to win that game. Even ending into the last couple minutes, they would have had to play perfect from 5 minutes left in the game. And yeah, that didn't happen, so they got swept. This series showed us a lot of things. I think the thing it showed us that was the most important was that Anthony Edwards has arrived. He is the face of this franchise, and he is going to be one of the faces of this league. It's been talked about. People have smack, and Katie was loving it. But yeah, the sun is setting on that Suns trio. Bradley Beal did not play very well in this series. Devin Booker, he had some high games, he had some low games. Katie played alright all throughout, but this team just is so top heavy. Depth is horrible, and the Timberwolves on the other side, they have so much talent. They have a lot of talent on the roster, and they really have a group that knows how to play together. So their defense was A1 as well. At the end of the series, you have the Timberwolves averaging 118.3 points per game to the Suns 103.3. That's a 15-point difference. Then you have 46.3 rebounds a game from the Timberwolves to the 32.5 of the Suns, and 24.5 assists a game by the Timberwolves to the 19.8 of the Suns. So in every major statistical category, the Timberwolves wiped them. And then in terms of the series leaders, you have Anthony Edwards scoring 31 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, and 6.3 assists per game in the sweep. And opposite to him, you have Devin Booker, who is very talented too. He ends up with 27.5 points per game, 3.3 rebounds per game, and 6.0 assists per game. With this, we saw a lot of things, like earlier in the offseason when the Suns and KD were being talked about in an interview to Ant. Ant said, they have Kevin Durant, but we have Jaden McDaniels, and everyone laughed at him. They were like, okay, not everyone, a lot of people laughed at him, but there were some people who were like, if you watch ball, you'll know that Jaden McDaniels has those clamps, and we got to see this put to the test. The Suns beat the Timberwolves all over in the regular season. I didn't even notice. I honestly didn't know that the T-Wolves lost every single game in the regular series, but it didn't matter. It clearly did not matter. T-Wolves had their number in the postseason, and yeah, very exciting players, and it's really just it's the Anthony Edwards show. He's young, he's talented, he has such a charming personality, he's very charismatic. We'll see if he can lead this team to a deep postseason run, and if he can do, I'm not speaking things into existence or anything, but like hypothetically, if Anthony Edwards were to get Minnesota the chip this year, it would be putting a huge accolade on his resume at a very young age, putting him up there with some of the best of the best. So let's see how this next series goes. But Anthony Edwards, we're on superstar watch now. I think he already signed the max contract. We already knew he was a star with his FIBA play and his all-star, but this next level might be gunning at the best shooting guard in the league status. Then after that, we have our fourth and final matchup in this year's playoffs. It was the 4-seeded LA Clippers versus the 5-seeded Dallas Mavericks. A bit short-handed on the Clippers side. Kawhi Leonard would make an appearance, but only for 2 games. He was sidelined with, I believe, a knee injury, same knee that's been bothering him. So this series, it ends in 6. We see in Game 1, the Clippers getting the best of the Mavericks. They win there at home, 109-97. Not the best effort from the Mavs. Then, despite a very similar score from the Mavs, they only put up 96 points in Game 2, less than they did in Game 1. But their defense was much better, and they hold the Clippers to 93, tying up the series at 1-1. Then, series moves into Dallas. Dallas plays at home, and they defend home court. They take a 101-90 victory away from the Clippers, and they have the 2-1 series lead. So they're in control at this point. And then in Game 4 in Dallas goes to the Clippers. I believe this is the one where Harden and Paul George played exceptionally well, shooting very, very efficiently, and just had great games all around. And so series is tied. Clippers win 116-111. was the higher seeded team. Yeah, came back. We go back to LA, and the Clippers try and taunt. They put up this billboard that shows flights from Dallas to Cancun, and that backfired on them because they lost by 30 points in Game 5. It wasn't close at all. Got absolutely routed. And then in Game 6, the Mavericks win their fourth and final game to take the series, winning it 4-2. The final score of Game 6 was 114 to 101. And it was, part of it is Kawhi Leonard, you know, this Clippers era with Paul George and Kawhi, it kind of will be defined by just the injuries. You know, you had that massive trade with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander to the Thunder and all these assets and draft picks to acquire Paul George right after you signed Kawhi Leonard. Everyone's wondering what kind of success will they see in the upcoming years, but these guys were just never healthy at the same time to make a deep playoff postseason run. Yeah, I think we only had it maybe once. So, kind of unfortunate. I don't know what the future for the Clippers holds, but they're old. You know, James Harden, as well as he played in some of these games. James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Kawhi are all old dudes, so might have to get younger, might have to retool this team, give up on this duo that looked very promising but yielded no results. Recapping the series, you have the Clippers scoring 100.3 points per game to 107 of the Mavs, 42 rebounds a game to the Clippers to the 42.3 for the Mavericks, so very close. And then in terms of assists, also pretty close, 20.2 for the Clippers, 21.2 for the Mavericks. Leading the series on the Clippers end was James Harden, scoring 21.2 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game, 8 assists per game. And for the Mavericks, you had Luka Doncic, who had 29.8 points per game, 8.8 rebounds per game, 9.5 assists per game. So continuing his stellar numbers from the regular season into the postseason, averaging a near triple-double even now. And Kyrie was phenomenal. You know, he was playing amazing defense in these games, and I think he had a couple 40-pointers, maybe just one, but it was coming up huge in the second half of games. Very flashy finishing, very, exceptional ball handling as always. The guy's very talented, and I think I saw a stat that said that he was averaging like 20 points in the second half and 5 points in the first half, or maybe 9 points in the first half. His numbers in the second half were just insane. As I was saying, I think Luka is one of the best first half performers in the league. He puts up like at least 20 in the first half. Then you have Kyrie finishing out games, putting up at least 20 in the second half. Great 1-2 combo. These guys, they take turns being dominant in the game, and very cool to see them in the postseason this year. Last year, obviously, the duo was formed, but we didn't get to see it. They unfortunately missed the playoffs, and this year, different story. Team's looking good, defense is good. They advanced to the second round, so let's see how far they can end up. But very solid 1-2 punch in Dallas at the backcourt of the roster. The Clippers lived and died by the 3 in this series. I believe it was 52.9% three-point percentage makes in their wins, and something like 24% in the losses. So when they're able to hit their threes, they were able to have success, but they relied on it a little too heavily, whereas the Mavericks shot similar in their three-point percentage in the wins and the losses. So less fluctuation in their scoring, so they end up on top. And that about does it for our first round of the NBA playoffs. Now we have our stage set for the next round, our 4 matchups. Just as a reminder on who I picked. So for the Timberwolves and Suns, I had the T-Wolves winning. I did, but I had them doing it in 7 games. And so obviously Cavaliers. They did it in 6, and I'm fine with that. So, for the West, I was able to get all of the teams perfectly. I don't know if I got any of... Oh, I did have Nuggets in 5. Nuggets in 5 was perfect. Then T-Wolves, I got the games wrong, but yeah, T-Wolves, Thunder, and Mavericks. They got it done faster than I expected. And then in the East, I had Celtics, Pacers, Knicks. Pacers and Knicks was absolutely spot on. Magic instead of the Cavs. So I was wrong about that last game who would win it. Celtics had them in 4 instead of 5. So overall, not too bad. I went 7 of 8. Pretty good. And for the next round, in my bracket, I have the Mavericks beating the Thunder in 6 games. Then I have the Nuggets beating the Timberwolves in 6 games. That one will be very interesting. I did state in a previous video that I think that the Timberwolves are the best equipped team size-wise in the West to take down the Nuggets, and I thought that they would be fatigued after playing a 7-game series with the Suns, but winning in just 4 and the Nuggets having to play such heart-wrenching games as they did, it should be very interesting. This series, honestly, it could go either way, but I am still sticking with the Nuggets in the 6. I would like to see the Timberwolves pull off the upset, but I have my faith in Denver at the moment. Then, instead of Celtics Magic, it's Celtics Cavaliers. I don't think they pose that big of a threat. I think the Celtics are still much better. The Cavs, maybe they take 2. I don't know if Porzingis, what the timeline on his injury return is. I think he did leave with injury in one of the games. I'm not sure if he's already back or not, but for the hell of it, let's say Celtics in 6 instead of 5. And the last series is Knicks Pacers. I think New York does it in 6 games. That was my original prediction, and I'm gonna stick with it. New York is playing well. The Pacers played an undermanned Bucks team. I think New York is just better. I think New York would have beat Milwaukee as well, and they took down the 76ers. So yeah, those are my projections heading into the next round. And that is all. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy content like this, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe. I'll be putting out more videos as the week goes on. Maybe. I might not be able to make a video for some time. Just for context, I have 2 midterms coming up this week, plus an interview for a position that I really would like to get. And then I have to fly back to Denver for my cousin's graduation. She's graduating from her master's program, so flying back to Denver to meet up with some family members I haven't seen in a while and celebrate her graduation. And then I have to come back on Sunday, so I'll be out all day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And before then, it's a very packed schedule, so maybe this is the last video for until next Monday. We'll see. We'll see if I get time to do anything else.